Hello, my name's Jerel Rogers. My topic is was the Vietnam War an American or North Vietnamese victory? Show of hands, show of hands, how many believe that America won the Vietnam War? I can understand your choice because many people, when they read about the Vietnam War or talk about it, they talk about America forcing the North Vietnamese to surrender and sign the peace accord to cease the fighting in Vietnam. But actually, it did not occur that way. And American and a lot of people cover up what actually truly happened in the Vietnam War. During the 60s, Vietnam was broken up into two sections. The North, which followed communism, and the South, that followed capitalism. The North invaded the South to make Vietnam whole, but to the Americans, they viewed it as an invasion of communism, and that's why they started sending troops to Vietnam. But the North Vietnamese viewed the Americans as invaders and started being more aggressive in their fighting. And now I'll discuss how the North Vietnamese used their homeland as an advantage against the Americans. First off, the Americans weren't prepared to fight against the North Vietnamese because they were trained to fight conventional warfare, which is basically a warfare that conducts conventional tactics and weapons against opposing armies in open confrontation. But the American military also prepared for nuclear war, which means they were trained to bomb targets that have military occupation. But the North Vietnamese didn't fight that way. They used guerrilla tactics, which is small military groups that use hit-and-run tactics to whittle the enemy's forces, and also create chaos for their opponents. Basically, they just hide in certain areas and hit them when the Americans least expect it. Plus, the North Vietnamese were very adept in urban warfare, which is fighting in cities, close quarters combat, which the Americans were never trained for. They were trained to fight in the wide open spaces of the fields or deserts. They were not prepared to fight in close quarter combat in cities where they have to search every house to get rid of the enemies that are placed in those areas. The Americans confronted that issue by dropping bombs in the cities, but that actually created more harm than good, because they created more hiding spots for the North Vietnamese to create traps for the American soldiers that head into the cities. The North Vietnamese also used the jungles of the Vietnam landscape to their advantage to create booby traps like the one that I'm going to show on my slide to attack the American troops that are on the ground. And when an American soldier steps into the traps, it actually causes the morale of the American soldiers to break, because they are scared to even walk into the jungle, because they are scared of the fact that there's going to be a lot more traps other than this one they just stepped into in the area. And also, the Americans believed that they bombed strategic targets in the area in Vietnam, like military targets like supply depots or supply routes in Vietnam. But in actuality, they didn't, because the North Vietnamese used the jungle environment to cover up those areas so American bombers can't see where they're bombing at. And that actually helped to this also caused more problems for the Americans later on. Plus, another fact is that most of the supplies and troop reinforcements that the North Vietnamese used were traveled underground, where where American bombs can't bomb them, and also American troops can't find them, because traveling underground, most people will never notice that you're there. And now there's aircraft. And now I will discuss how Americans lost the Vietnam War. One reason is that the North Vietnamese had prior experience in fighting a superpower like the United States, which was the Indochina War in 1950, where the Vietnamese people fought against the French army to kick them out of their country and gain their freedom. And they used that experience from the Indochina War to their advantage against the American military, using the same tactics as they used in the Indochina War. Another reason was that when the North Vietnamese proclaimed that they were going to surrender, Nixon announced that they signed a peace accord before they even signed the actual peace. Before the North Vietnamese actually signed the peace accord, so the North saw this as a slip up and waited patiently for the Americans to slip up, the American government or Nixon to slip up. In which case, it actually happened when Nixon resigned from office after the Watergate incident. And with the resignation of Nixon from the office, the peace accord of 1975 started to fall apart. And without the main supporter of the peace accord, Nixon, in office, the peace accord was at the mercy of the American government. And when Nixon out of office, many of the American Congress that opposed Nixon started defunding the peace accord, which allowed America to resupply South Vietnam, so if the North Vietnamese attack, they have supply weapons to halt the North Vietnamese advance. But defunding the peace accord actually broke their commitment with the North Vietnamese, and the North Vietnamese used this to their advantage, and they started invading the South, hitting the cities, towns, provinces, to the point where they controlled the entire southern portion of Vietnam, and started reforming it into the Vietnam that we have now. If I could, and this, as you can see, using their homeland to their advantage, and also patience, allowed the North Vietnamese to win the war in Vietnam. What I also learned from this topic is that America was actually arrogant when they entered the war, portraying themselves as above everyone else, thinking that they can demolish believing that they can defeat this enemy with ease. But that proved to bite them in the butt. But from a phrase that I found from a movie, the arrogance of man is that they're in control, meaning that we are never in control of the situations that we are in. Thank you.